Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this BFI Film Academy Southwest Recommends Q&A session presented by Watershed in Bristol. My name is Arsalan Motavali and today I'm chatting with filmmaker Christine Saab about her new short film In the Space You Left, which has been selected for the UK Student Awards at Encounters Film Festival 2021. Christine, how are you?
Yes, very good and very happy to be here.
Good, I'm happy to be here too. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here too. I really loved your film. It's a really personal story, but I felt like it was very universal in its own right. And like, again, the personal, it really connected with me. For those who haven't seen it, how would you describe your film in a couple of sentences?
Okay, in a couple of sentences, In the Space You Left is, I think, broadly about connection in the digital age, but equally about the right to disappear. It follows my personal journey as I sort of look for a friend of mine who disappeared a number of years ago, about 7 years ago, but using just his digital footprint. And along the way in that journey, I come across an online community. So individuals on this website that is a kind of forum for people that are in a similar situation to me. So people that are looking for people from their past who have disappeared or who they've lost contact with.
And this is a really personal story. For anyone who watches it would know it's a story that is really personal to yourself. But naturally, as a film, it's going to reach people who won't have a connection to you and won't have known of any of the characters in the film or any of the real life people presented in this film. So what would you want audiences kind of to take away from what would you want their takeaway to be when they kind of watch this film?
I think making films and putting them out in the world, one of the best things is, people do take different things based on their own experiences. But I suppose thinking about my kind of core interest or my core intention with the film was really an exploration of how we connect and sort of disconnect in this day and age. I think it's natural for people to think of their past, people from their past, but I think with the internet, we are so closely intertwined with each other, or it feels like we're so closely intertwined, even if we may not be directly speaking with each other. And in that same way, we're so closely intertwined with our past. If you think about it, nothing really disappears on the internet.
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to create a space for audiences to think about that. I mean, I hope that I've struck a tone that does create that space and lets people reflect on their own lives and their own relationships. But yeah, I think getting audiences to think about that, to think about how the past affects our present day, the way that the internet kind of complicates connections, but also creates opportunity for new ones. And finally, that idea of the right to disappear, whether it's digitally or physically.
I think that was one of my favorite parts about the film, just because I had never heard of sort of a community of people looking for not necessarily lost as in like missing people, but people that have used to be in their lives and are no longer in their lives. And I thought that was really unique, just a community of people that kind of are united through, the missing of a loved one or the missing of an old friend. I think that was really powerful. And yeah, so which leads me perfectly actually onto my next question. How did the story even come about? You said in the film that you hadn't heard in 7 years. So I'm really curious as to at what point in these past 7 years did it kind of, not only kind of the realization come to you that you really miss this person and this person hasn't been in contact for a while, but what also kind of brought that past out and made you want to put it?
Essentially, I think I was very close to making a very different film, but COVID hit and kind of turned everything upside down, as it did for everybody. But it, and I found myself, I was on the Isle of Wight, kind of in this very isolated place, physically and also mentally. And it really made me think about people from my past, but it also really made, because it was, I feel it was a time where sort of everybody was going through the same thing. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
of course, it was a very different experience for different people, but their own version of the same thing. It felt like the first time that we were all, you know, looking out for the same news, and there was a kind of, even though we were told to stay apart, there was a kind of like, gosh, everybody is thinking about this right now. And I think that feeling really hit home for me. It made me really think about yeah, people from my past. And you know, I had been looking for my friend for quite a number of years, not with the same kind of tenacity as I did at the time, but you know, every couple of months I would sort of check in, have a little dig around. So I think it was sort of born out of this curiosity, but also curiosity about why I couldn't forget about somebody. Yeah.
I think what you said about the past sort of year and a half now was really, I think that's what made me kind of really connect to the film as well. It's just that I think your film came at a really perfect time where a lot of people were missing a lot of loved ones, and kind of experiencing what this is to kind of a more extreme level, and being able to empathize and kind of really put yourself in your shoes, and the other friends you have who also had missed him, put yourself into those shoes and what that is like to kind of lose a loved one under strange kind of circumstances, where it's kind of unclear what his intentions were, and where that leaves your friendship and your relationships. And I feel like it came at such a time where people were really, maybe some people for the first time were really having to kind of deal with where this new isolation leaves their own friendships. And I think that's your film captured that so perfectly with such an engaging story. So I think it's really great. And I think that's also why it fits so perfectly within that past with him, because it like was super relatable and everyone was kind of dealing with their own past and relationships at the time. Love to ask you next, what have you actually enjoyed about being a part of this film festival, Encounters, both for you as a filmmaker and reactions to your film, and also like your favorite event or favorite film you've seen, anything like that to share so people can go and watch some.
Yeah, so for me, you know, it's a first for me to be involved in a film festival that isn't just solely documentary focused. So seeing the way that it's been curated by theme, and then seeing how kind of documentary, live action, drama, and animation has, you know, tackled the same theme has been really interesting and really great to connect with the others in my category through the Q&A. I have yet to get through all the films, but I think one that I found very moving is a short documentary called Hanging On, which is sort of tackles that idea of gentrification, but I would really recommend it. It does a beautiful thing of tackling a very important topic, but sort of through the heart and very creatively, with a lot of emotion and a lot of grace. So I'd really recommend that one.
Yeah. If no one asks for my opinion, but if you do want a recommendation from me,
yes,
I'd really recommend Homebird. It's an animation short film / documentary. It might be inspired by true events, I don't know. But it's beautifully and probably painstakingly animated, frame by frame. And it's just really short and really beautifully made. And it's also in the student program as well.
Right. Yeah. It's I think I remember speaking to the filmmaker.
Yes, it's in the Past Within thing actually. Now that I think of it. Yeah. So great film. I'd also love to ask you about your own experience in film and what's kind of brought you to this stage. I already asked you about how kind of this film came about, but I'm curious to know, firstly, is this your first film? I'm curious to know that. And also, what was it that kind of triggered you to proceed to making this film? Like, what was it? COVID? Was it being at home and having some more time to kind of maybe look up Shinsaku and kind of think about your thoughts and emotions towards him? So, you know, that's kind of clear for you to answer.
Yes. So is this my first film? Yeah, this is my first film that I've made and kind of put out into the world. So it's really nice to see it kind of live on in that way, and to see how people relate to it and connect to it. That's been really special, I think. I have made other films in the past, but I think, as with most filmmakers, you make a lot of,
Yeah.
like at home, you've made
Yeah.
something and you're like, I'm never
Yeah.
showing this to anybody ever.
The film's for our eyes only. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a sense, I suppose it is the first film that I've kind of properly seen through to the end, and you know, put in front of a larger audience. And the next part of your question was kind of the feeling that, or why I decided to make this film.
What was it that particularly triggered you to kind of proceed and go ahead and make this film?
I think it was really in a sense, the pandemic that was all sort of forced upon us, that kind of the isolation. And I think it really put me in a very reflective mode, reflective about the people that have kind of come in and out of my life, and why that might be, and what has led me to be here today. It sounds a little bit vague, but and it's kind of difficult to put into words, but I think, I was sort of very isolated on this island, and it really makes you look inward, I think, and kind of, think about people from your past. Yeah.
My last question for you is one that I've kind of been thinking about ever since I kind of watched your film. Is, I think we've all sort of been in, I know I certainly have been in a position where, you're just like, I just want to disappear from online. I wish like I wasn't online at all. And that's clearly a conflict you go through in this film, where it's between wanting to kind of, but also wanting to respect his wishes to kind of be left alone and kind of, find what he was looking for in a sense, and be away from the internet and away. Mentions in the film that he canceled his phone plan at one point. How was it to kind of balance those two, especially throughout whilst you were making the film, whilst you were talking to friends, trying to find information about him? What was that like for you to try and balance again, try and make this film and trying to find your friend, but also wanting to respect his wishes?
I think from the conception of the film, I think first of all, it's important to say that I was, he was really in my mind and in my heart for a very long time, and that kind of, it almost bled sort of naturally into sort of my journey in looking for him. But I think that question, that tension between what do I want, but what is right, there was definitely a seed of that within me since the beginning. Because, I think I come closer to finding him, but as I do so, I ask myself, is that really the right thing to do? It's definitely something I grappled with, I think, and I think the film is quite true to my own journey, because it really was about that realization for me. And I think it's also something that we definitely found in the edit. I worked with a very talented editor, Cecilia Delena, and we had made various other cuts that were sort of more about what might have happened, or why might he have chosen to do that. But I think in the end, you can only speculate, and it felt like a more respectful and true film to actually make it about me, and make it about the others that I sort of connected with online, and what it's like to be almost left behind when someone disappears. I think I can only really speak from my experience. So this film is really my experience. And I think, I hope that we found a good balance in that sense, that it provokes those thoughts, but also respects him.
I mean, I really think you did. For me, that was, when I was watching it, that was definitely running through my mind, about how difficult this must have been. I was trying to put myself in your shoes if that was my friend, you know, respecting someone's wishes, and also, you know, wanting to not only find them, but also make this piece of art, which I think is, you are of course in your right to do. And I think taking the route you did, where it's making it about you rather than, you say, about speculation, I think really does that perfectly. So great.
Yeah,
Great,
and I
thanks.
think there was also practical things in a sense where certain, I mean, sort of the narrative and the emotional narrative is completely, you know, genuine, but I would say it's also important to mention that certain sort of small details about location and things like that were omitted.
Okay, that's great. Well, Christine, thank you so much. It's been so great. Everybody should go and watch In the Space You Left. I can't wait to see what it does in this festival. I wish you all the best for the awards, and I also wish you all the best with this film moving forward. I'm sure it's going to find a home someplace. I'm positive of that. So you've done a great job. And
Thank
I've
you very
been
much,
very
Arsalan.
happy to talk to
Pleasure
you.
to speak to you.
No problem.